Oh yeah! It's time for another episode of the Comic Book Kaiju. I am your host, Trent Justin Vactor, and we have a special guest on the show today. We have not only TikToker, not only YouTuber, not only Discorder, but we have comic book manga collector, casual gamer, horror lover, content video editor, Mr. Zen Multiverse on the show with me today, aka Andre Harris. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm just humbled by just being on your show.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. And I think your content that you're putting out is fantastic, and it's right in line with our audience. Everything that we love, I think you love as well. So that's why I definitely want to have you on and give you a spotlight because I noticed you're a level 38 human on your Instagram. That's what it tells me. So I always want to have high level humans on the show.
That's
So
the way. I've been
yes.
training for a long time to get there.
Excellent. So I actually wanted to start off the interview with how did you get into this? How did you get into comics, manga, anime? What was kind of your gateway drug, I should say? How did you get into it
Yeah.
first?
Yeah, definitely for me, I would say like middle school when I was a lot younger. I would go to the corner store and they would sell like the DC cards and
Oh
also
yes, yes.
the Marvel masterpieces.
Oh
And
man, yes.
I didn't have much money, but I would, $2 was enough to get a stack of cards, and you would open it up,
Oh
and
man.
depending on what you got, and then I would try to draw the cards. You know what I mean? And I would collect them, and I would go back to school and then like show off to my friends and things of that nature. It was just thinking about it right now is nothing but pure nostalgia, right?
Yes, yes.
Seeing those Flare Ultra Marvel cards is just like
Dang.
everything. And
Mm.
throughout the years, I didn't get into reading comic books because it was only card
Mm,
collection,
mm.
right?
Yes.
And then I think around like seventh grade, eighth grade, I remember watching Cartoon Network, and that's when Toonami was about.
Oh
And then
man, yes,
like,
yes.
and it wasn't that I didn't see anime before that. I just didn't understand the concept of what anime was, right?
Ah, yes, yes.
So I used to watch Dragon Ball. That was my first anime of all time. I watched Dragon Ball on channel 11, I think, at the time,
Yes.
and I watched it just as far as I could with the ocean dub. And then Toonami came on a little bit later, and I was able to go back, and then they continued. You know what I mean?
Yes,
They
yes,
they
yes.
had the ocean dub, and then they had the Funimation dub, right? And I didn't really understand the difference. I just thought that the actors got a little bit more mature, right? I was like, oh, their voices are a little bit different. They're a little bit older now. It makes sense. I'm older now, you know?
Right.
But that was like my first it was my first introduction to anime.
Mm.
And from there, as I got older, I started to have my own job so I could afford the things that I wanted to buy in terms of like comic books and things of that nature. And then after that, when Toonami was booming, then you wanted to see more anime, and yeah, it was just a really great era, and that was like the birth of like my geekdom, right?
Mm.
For
Yes,
me in
yes.
general, and then the rest is history.
Nice. That's actually very similar to my own story, and everything that you were saying brought back memories, and like you said, pure nostalgia for me of opening those card packs,
Right.
collecting them, and I had the same too. I was trying to draw the images
Yeah,
and
yeah.
kind of wish I was a better artist, but
Me too.
yeah, it was like a gateway of man, just kind of thinking in your head, what stories are these characters going through?
Right,
What yeah, what interactions are they having? What fights
right,
are they having?
right, right.
So yeah, very similar stuff, and the same way for me with the manga and the anime. I had a little bit of a different story, just from the standpoint of my dad was in the Air Force, so we were moving around all the time, and I was actually living in Japan on an Air Force
Wow.
base
Okay.
when I was in elementary school, and I would go and buy like, or my mom would buy them, I should say, the mangas, but just because I love the
Okay.
art, it wasn't
Right.
translated at that point. So
Right.
I don't speak Japanese, so I was just make up the story in my head. And it's funny
Ah.
because when I finally got the translations, like the ocean dub, and then watching the Toonami and everything,
Mhm.
it was like, wait a minute, these stories are completely different than the ones I made up in my head.
Right.
But yeah, I've just been a huge Dragon Ball fan, and got my wife into it, and hopefully
Awesome.
my little baby, when he's a little bit older, I'll get him into it as well.
That's the way.
Actually, did you have a chance to see that the new movie, the new Dragon Ball movie?
Yeah, the Dragon Ball Superhero. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
me and my son, we went to go see it,
Oh,
and it was a fun ride. It was just a, it wasn't too intense. There was a little bit of slice of life in there,
yeah,
and
yeah,
overall, I would just say that it was a stellar movie. I know some of the reviews were kind of like all over the place a little bit, and it didn't do as well as I think they wanted it to do. But for me and my son, we just enjoyed it, and those are memories that will live with us for a lifetime.
yes, yes.
He got into Dragon Ball Super rather.
Ooh,
And his first
first.
intro, yeah,
Oh,
Super was first,
nice,
and that's
nice.
it's funny how that works because for me, my first introduction was Dragon Ball Z.
Yes,
I
yes,
didn't watch Dragon Ball until after later on when
yes.
it premiered. So for him, it's
Exact same.
Dragon Ball Super. He got introduced to the whole like Trunks arc where Zamatsu and Goku
Ooh,
Black was in there,
yes,
and
yes.
we would watch it like religiously every Sunday, right?
Mm,
And he literally grew up on that arc, right?
man,
He's about 12 years old now. He's about to go to high school next year.
nice,
And he's
nice.
been waiting, like, when is it going to come out? I'm like, well, I'm not too sure, but at least we had the, at least
Yeah,
we had the, like, the Broly movie, and we had
right.
the Dragon Ball Superheroes movie that just dropped. So looking forward to whatever they're going to come out with next, because I believe that there's a brand new series that's going to come out and some spin-offs as well, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And I really want to cover manga more on this podcast. We don't necessarily dive into it as much as I want to, just because life and
Yeah.
time and kind of dividing everything up. But
Right.
definitely want to get some more on. So actually, hopefully, you can come back and talk manga more with us and anime.
Oh, definitely. Because I need to get back into the
Mm.
flow of, and like you said, because of life, like there was a time period where I was collecting a lot of manga, right?
Ooh, yes,
And
yes.
I was reading, like, there was a manga that I was reading named Ikigami, and I would religiously go to Midtown Comics, right?
Oh,
And
nice, nice.
just get a ton of like manga and just read them. Some of them I didn't know what they were about, but I was like, well, this is the fun of it, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's been a while. I think the last manga that I really read probably was Bleach, and
Oh, okay. Nice, nice.
I read a lot of manga, but it's been years to be very honest. I've been engaging in a lot of anime,
Mm.
but haven't been reading as much. But I want to get back into, because I remember that feeling, right? Of just
Yeah,
like,
right.
wow, turning the pages, and you have to use a great amount of your imagination, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though you're turning the pages, you might not know what the characters sound like, or even like the clash of a sword, right? Or even
Right.
a sound. So you have to use your imagination, and this lends itself to just like you're just like immersed in a book for a really
Mm.
long time, you know? So
Yes, yes. Yeah, and that's something that's great about I think the way that the stories are told in the mangas, and the difference between like Japanese storytelling and then American storytelling with the American comics. It's like
right,
it's just interesting to see the creators and what their influences are, and how
right.
they're kind of, if how they put themselves into it. So
Yes.
yeah, all of that stuff is very interesting. But I wanted to actually
Yeah.
get your reaction real quick, because one of your recent videos, actually just yesterday, was the we don't talk about video games that much on this show, but
Right.
the Tekken 8
Ah.
reaction video that you put out, your reaction was exactly the same as mine, where I was watching it and I was like, that's a cutscene? Wait, that's
Right.
gameplay? What?
Right.
So I guess, can you talk about your video games side as well? Kind of what
Yeah.
what stuff are you into right now? Like what's really getting you excited, especially from those announcements that just came out?
Yeah. So I'm into a lot of. When my first introduction to video games was probably like my babysitter back in the day. My first
Oh,
game that I've
mm.
ever played was Super Metroid, right?
Ooh, nice, nice.
And
Yes.
I remember not having a Super Nintendo at the time, but just like just like seeing the game and then playing it, and then like I could even like replay the song in my head right now, just like the
Yeah,
theme of like Super
right.
Metroid. And it's just like amazing. And I remember getting
Mm.
my Super Nintendo, and I remember getting Street Fighter 2, and me and my sister, she's like 12 years older than me, but I remember me playing with M Bison, and she would play with whomever, and I
Mm.
would Psycho Crusher the life out of her. But but it was like those were like really good times. And then I got Mortal Kombat, and then that was it.
Ooh.
Because for me, Mortal Kombat, yes, it was, the fatalities and things of that nature, but I was so invested in the storyline. That's what
Mm.
really got me, the lore, right? Beating the game
Yes.
and then seeing the ending. And
Yes.
yeah, it was just really just amazing overall. But then I got into some RPGs like Final Fantasy VII. I think everyone knows about Final Fantasy
Yes.
VII.
Yep.
And I would say, my top favorite games of all time would have to go to like Final Fantasy VII,
Ooh.
uh, Metal Gear Solid,
Yes. Yes.
Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and of course there's a whole lot others.
Yeah.
But over time, as work life and things of that nature, me having a son, I wasn't able to immerse myself in RPGs like
Mm.
Final Fantasy the way I used to. And
Right.
not because I don't like the games. I think part and parcel, it's yes, work life, but also I think my attention span started to
Mm.
change over time
Yeah.
too, right? So
Right.
I really relied on just playing a lot of fighting games, right?
Mm.
Like Mortal Kombat. Of course, I played every single Mortal Kombat game because it was all about the story for me.
Yes.
And Street Fighter 2 as well, and Tekken. And leading
Mm.
into Tekken, I'm thoroughly hyped for Tekken because for me, it became a lot of story and lore, right?
Yes. Yes.
Especially me watching the Netflix show that just dropped on,
Oh
yeah,
man,
not too long ago, and it
I
was
need to watch
so
that.
good. Yeah,
Oh
it was
man.
good. It was really
Okay.
good. Um, but yeah, in terms of what I'm playing right now, just a couple of fighting games and watching my son play games too, right? And then he's really good, but I'll play like Dead by Daylight a couple of
Ooh.
times,
Yes.
which is a horror esque game where you have to escape, and it's just really fun overall. But most of the time, I'm like watching, but I'm like paying attention to the lore. Like I'm doing a lot of research, and I found myself recently within the last 2 years just realizing that I could read something and then just like take in and just not like memorize, not
Mm.
no photographic memory or
Right.
anything like that, but um I think like I've taught myself to like retain and then teach back, right? Which is the
Mm.
essence of teaching, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
like if you could retain and teach back, then you got it. And a lot of
Right.
my videos, I'm reading and then making the videos on it,
Mm.
and then seeing, did I memorize saying Earth 21867, right? Or something of the nature
Right.
for that alternate timeline. But yeah, in terms of the video games, yeah, pretty much just playing anything. Um, I like horror games. I love horror games to death. And so I'll go on itch.io and download a quick game and play it. And that's about it. And I just have a good time with it. That's like where my
Yeah.
attention span is right now. Like a quick hour to 2 hour game, 3 hour at max. And yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's exactly what um my kind of story is and situation. As life has kind of creeped up, it's been
Yeah.
less and less, and I'm always looking for the narrative
Right.
first and
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
immersing myself. And actually, um, I do another video game podcast, and my co-hosts are always kind of going back and forth with me because I'm like, story is the most important, and they're like, no, gameplay is the most important. And
Right.
so we always kind of have a back and
Right.
forth. I think you have to have an equal balance of
I
both,
think so
but
too. Yeah.
it's the story that hooks me and the characters
Me
that
too.
make me want to kind of play the game more. And actually, that's the same
Yes.
thing with my wife. She gets into a lot of story driven games and things that, like, let's say, like a Telltale game
Right.
where you have
Right.
to pick and choose, almost choose your own adventure.
Right. Yeah.
And she gets sucked into those type of games. But that's really, I've found as I've gotten older, the narrative of everything is
Right.
more impactful for me, of whether it's comic books, video games, anime, whatever it is. It's just,
Right.
even like professional wrestling, it's like this
Right.
is a like a male soap opera, and it's the storylines and the
Right.
what's going to happen between the characters that I'm interested in. So I think that's kind of interesting from when we're younger and children, and then as we age and grow older, and we kind of start to think about like um, the narrative of these things versus just, oh, that's a cool action scene or that looks cool,
Right.
versus like, oh, why are they doing that? Why is that action scene? Why are they fighting each other? um, and that's actually something that I really like about your videos, when you do the verses, and when you do the different kind of, um, what would it be if this fought this, and
Right.
um, when you make those type of videos, is it something that it's a, like a what if scenario for you, like a dream? Oh yeah, like how do you come up with who's gonna fight? I guess.
Right. So a lot of it is just whatever just pops into my head at a
Mm.
given time, or sometimes I might go through the internet and there's like debates and things of that nature. So I'm like, you know what? It might just be a quick comment. I was like, let me make a video on that, right? I think one of the ones was like Krillin versus Wolverine, right?
Ooh,
And you know, I think a lot of folks downplay certain characters
yeah.
to the point where it's like, well, did we actually really think about like feats and things of that nature? But I'm so open to interpretation.
Mm.
I'm open to debate, and I'm open to being swayed too in another direction. I love it so much. Like I don't get any emotional impact to like fight back or anything like that. I actually want to be driven in a different direction, but sometimes it just comes to me, and I found a post on TikTok, and they were like, "Would the Marvel universe survive a Kryptonian invasion?" And for me, it was
Mm.
just like all fun to just think about. I was so many scenarios were popping into my head, and overall, it was just yeah. For me, it's just like fun to come up with these scenarios and these what if situations. But for me, I think I like to dig into like the deeper like character study, right?
Oh yeah.
Based on what I've seen this character do, how would that character react in that situation versus another character that I've read about or even seen in an anime? It's pretty stellar to kind of think about it and immerse yourself in that because you lose sight of reality for a little bit, and I'm in my Zen, right? I immerse myself into it, and that's why I
Yes.
named my channel Zen Multiverse, right? Just
Nice.
geeking out on the things that I love to do and immersing myself, being free of the moments to be in the moment, so to
Mm.
speak.
Yeah, that's perfect. And it's funny you mentioned Krillin, because I have a, kind of an idea or mantra where it's like,
Mhm.
there are no bad characters, only bad writers. And
Ah,
I think any writer that is good can turn any character into like a impressive storyline. So
absolutely.
it's funny that in that superhero movie, they kind of downplayed Krillin, and like, oh, you still even here? Like,
Yeah.
it made me think about it. It's funny, just, I know the comedy of it, but
Right.
I always look at characters like that either people look over, or they don't spend enough time thinking about that character. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, that how can that character be better? How can that character have an engaging storyline? So yeah,
Right.
it's that's a great pull of Wolverine versus
Right.
Krillin. So I
And
love
it's
that.
so true with the writer because, like, I could clearly remember Dragon Ball Krillin, Dragon Ball Z Krillin that was on Planet Namek with like Gohan, and
Mm,
they were going through some stuff, for lack
yeah,
of better
right,
words.
right.
And then you start to see the decline, but was it really a decline or was it a writer change, right? Let me focus on a couple of characters and pull back certain characters, right?
Mm,
Because I felt like, at least in terms of like the gravity of things, right? Krillin on Namek was like semi peak Krillin, right? They were
yes,
going through
right.
some stuff. Like it was do or die. Like my boy Gohan and Krillin, like it was just them and Bulma, you know what I mean? On the planet by themselves, trying to get the Dragon Balls, right? To wish back their friends. But it was pretty intense if you think about it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And actually, Gohan is another example of my wife. So she had never seen Dragon Ball until
Right.
she met me, and so we watched it together. And when we got to the Cell Saga,
Hmm.
she was like, "This is Gohan is the best. I love him."
Right.
My wife's behind me. And once he after he left, after the Cell Saga, when he
Right.
became the Great Saiyaman, and
Right.
the teacher side of, she's like, Gohan, what happened to him? He's a wimp
Right.
now. So she
Right.
loved that superhero movie.
Mhm.
She's like, yeah, this is Beast Gohan. This is who he should be.
Nice,
So
nice.
I like that, taking characters that either you wouldn't think of, or oh,
Hmm.
that's a weak character, and
Yeah.
turning them into, oh, this is my favorite character. This is a strong
Hmm.
character. Because I've had that happen a number of times in Marvel Comics, even with, like, let's say with Daredevil. He's
Right.
a lot more well known now.
Right.
But when I was younger, I was all about Spider Man, and the only way I knew Daredevil was he would appear sometimes in the Spider Man
Uh huh.
comic, and
Right.
I'm like, oh, he's Spider Man's friend, or even like
Right.
on the TV show, like on the Spider Man animated show, and it was like, oh, he's Spider Man's friend. That's all I knew him
Right.
as. But later, when I started to read like some of the key storylines in
Right.
Daredevil, I was like, oh, this is amazing. This guy's now
Yeah.
he's one of my favorite characters. So it's like
Hmm.
you just have to find the right fit of writer and character,
So
to
true.
get that perfect story. Speaking of, actually, before we conclude, I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
who is your favorite Marvel character of all time? If you just pick
Favorite.
one,
Oh man. Oh, this is a hard one.
putting you on the spot.
I know. Favorite Marvel character of all time. I felt like I've thought about this many times and never came to a conclusion because I have my DC pick and I have my Marvel pick. Um, at this current time in my ripe age of level 38, uh, I would have to say, oh man, this is so hard. There's a character called Forget Me Not.
Ooh.
Yes, and he is a mutant. I have a lot of favorite characters, but he comes to mind first. So I'm gonna go with that right now. Forget Me Not is a character who has the ability of he's in a constant state of existential superposition, meaning that he's there but he's not there. If you were to look at him for a little bit, and if you were to turn away, you would forget that he was there. He is the embodiment of he's the embodiment of, it's not a quote, I probably don't know the quote, but basically doing things for the right reasons, but others won't know that you did it, right? And apparently he's been on the X-Men, he's been on a lot of teams, and he's done a lot of great things, but no one has ever remembered him. And Professor X has created psychic reminders just to remind himself that he is there. So a lot of the characters that I end up picking, they hold true to some kind of moral connection, right? That you do things for the right reasons, even if no one's going to remember it, or no, if even if no one sees it. So
Mm.
it's Forget Me Not.
Dang, that's crazy. I've never heard of that character, but now
Yeah.
the way you described him, he's my new favorite character. That's crazy.
That's my
Okay, cool.
boy.
I'm gonna look up some comics with Forget Me Not.
Yeah.
So actually, you mentioned DC. So who is
Yeah.
your favorite DC character?
DC, a lot of people like to, judge this character, but it's Superman. Superman
Ah, nice.
has been my favorite character. One of the characters that I've grew up watching. Right, I grew up watching Christopher Reeve Superman. Right,
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
I remember seeing the interviews, and I remember seeing the interviews and just feeling like, is he Superman right now, or because it wasn't about the powers, it had nothing to do with the powers, it had everything to do with the character, right?
Mm.
And I remember in an interview, Christopher Reeves was talking about like Superman is just being a good neighbor, right? Just being there for another person. And I always would read those comic books as kind of like a moral connection, right? Like I have to be a great man to do
Mm.
great things for others, to service others, right?
Yeah.
And that's how I teach my son, right? To just to be strong, of course, but to take care of others, to do right, even in the hardest moments, that you persevere. So Superman has always been that character for me, and yeah, there's the superpowers, super strength, and things of that nature. But I remember recently actually reading Superman Red and Blue, where they just have a
Ooh.
montage of different writers, and there's I believe it's Superman Red and Blue, but basically he's going against Darkseid, for example, right? And basically Darkseid shoots an Omega beam, and he has the Superman basically has the option of either you save the people or something else, right? And he doesn't just save the people, he chooses to get hit by the Omega beam knowing that it's going to hurt him so that he can save the people while doing something else. And I feel like, when they give the, would you press the button for the train to turn left or to turn
Oh,
right?
right.
It's about what yes, you have those two options, but it's about making the third option, right? So Superman is that character for me, and as you can hear, I look to a lot of characters who have that, who will do things for the right reasons, and there's a deeper meaning to that character, or at least I'm creating that deeper meaning for those characters, right?
Nice. Yeah,
So,
that is beautifully said. I 100% agree with everything that you stand for, and I'm actually the exact same way. A lot of my morality and who I think, no, what I think of as right and wrong,
right,
not only came from my parents, but
right,
from comic books and from
right,
superheroes. And
right.
I've always loved the power fantasy of superheroes, and like, oh, it'd be cool to have, I can shoot
Right,
lasers out of my eyes or I can fly,
right,
but also being a good person
yeah,
and protecting other people, like that is just as important to me as the powers of superheroes. So
right,
Superman, Spider-Man's the same way,
right,
power and responsibility and things like
right.
that. So yeah, that's fantastic. Were you a Smallville watcher at all?
I wasn't, and it just, I heard so many great things. I don't know what I was doing around the time where it first started. I don't know if I was like on the track team and I didn't make it home in time. I don't know, but like I kind of like, there wasn't like a reason why it didn't. It was
Mm,
just like I just, that wasn't my saga,
yeah, right.
but I heard so many great things. I started watching The Flash and then Infinite Crisis when they went back
Ooh,
and they
yes.
revisited. There's a lot of things that I do know of from the show, but I wasn't watching it consistently as a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I know that are really great friends who are like true fans like no,
Mm.
but like I've learned passively from them.
Nice. Yeah, that was for me it was it was aimed at kind of a teen and
Right.
even kind of like a female audience too, being on
Mhm.
the CW at but I would just took it as, oh, this is a great Superman story,
Right.
and just I think the first, maybe the first 4 to 5 seasons, I thought
Mhm.
it was like excellent. It kind of went downhill at the end, but just being a Superman fan, that's always one
Right.
that I look to as one of the best interpretations of Superman. So I was just
Nice.
curious
Yeah.
on that one. All right, cool. Well, uh, Mr. Zen Multiverse, I cannot thank you enough for joining me. I
Thank you.
want you to let everyone know where they can find you on the internet, because you are putting out some fantastic content, not
Thank
only
you.
educational and informational, but also it's just good. You're putting out goodness into the world, into the universe. So,
That's my
why don't you let
goal.
our readers, or our listeners, I should say, and our viewers know where can they find you?
Yeah, you could find me on TikTok. I just started my TikTok not too long ago, and but it's getting up there. So it's Zen Multiverse there. You could also find me on Instagram and definitely YouTube. YouTube was my catalyst, right, where I really started on the internet and so social media. But it's Zen Multiverse on all of those platforms. And when you go to the YouTube page and also the TikTok, it's all about just comic book stuff right now. And but if you go into the catalog of the YouTube, you'll see a ton more things that I geek on, and those things are gonna come back, right? So horror games, just good talks and good times, and just things in general that allow me to immerse myself, but also to reach others as well too, right? So on some of my live talks, I just have folks chatting and they're talking about life, and then we get into it, and then when we're done, we're done, and then when we come back together, we come back together, and it's just a group of people who are like-minded, who just want to have a good time. And even the spammers I have brought to the Zen multiverse. Um, that kind of like Naruto feel where you bring the bad guys onto the team, and it's like there's no need to spam. Like, how's your day going? And then
Yeah.
just like I'm subbing to you. But yes, Zen multiverse on all three of those platforms, and I also
Beautiful.
sell. I forgot about this on
Oh,
Whatnot.
yes.
On Whatnot, I sell comic books every other Friday as well. So like just highly graded comic books that are kind of like in the media at a time with a given movie that connects to it. So yeah,
Nice.
Zen Multiverse on that too.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you very much, Andre, for joining us. And you can always find all of our episodes on YouTube or on whatever podcasting platform you are listening to, dear listener. But we'd like to thank you very much for always supporting. Please share us with your family and friends. Leave us a review in Spotify, Apple, all those places. And I would very much like to thank again. I cannot thank Andre enough. Zen Multiverse. Everybody go out there and please subscribe to his channels. Watch all of his content, and let's spread the joy and the love of being a geek out there with everybody else. So for the Comic Book Kaiju podcast, I want to let everybody know that Mr. Andre Harris, Zen Multiverse, loves comics, and you should too.